Hello there, and welcome to another episode of Live with Littledata. And today I'm joined by Adam from Magna Monster. Welcome, Adam.
Great to be back again. Thanks for having me.
Good. So we've got a really interesting topic today about how do we actually use our Klaviyo engagement to boost paid ad channels. And I think what we see from a lot of our brands we're working with is obviously, yes, they need to do retention marketing, but ultimately they also need to scale the top line and get more new customers in the door. And I think we've both got some really interesting ways that we can use the good engagement that we get with email to do that. So yeah, we're going to be talking through some of these ideas. Please do ask any questions in the chat as we go along. We'll try and come to those at the end. I hope you can leave this session with some really great ideas of how you can actually use some of the tools you're already using, but just join them together and boost some of the acquisition. I mean, Adam, perhaps just start off before we dive into the tactics about how you see this challenge. I mean, obviously you work with a lot of brands that they come to you wanting to boost retention marketing, but it's a balance, right? They've also got to be finding efficient ways to acquire people onto their list.
Yeah, well, I think it's a necessity at some point that you have to integrate this into your strategy. And the reason being is if you look at the data for a regular D2C brand, if you're getting towards a 30-40% repeat purchase rate, well, that's about as good as it gets if we're being black and white with figures here. So there's a limit basically to what you can do with email or any retention channel until the laws of physics, you could say, kick in with D2C.
Yeah.
And when that happens, you need to think pragmatically and how you can add value in your specific role. And the way to do that is by helping strengthen acquisition. So there is limited upside to how much revenue you can generate operating in a silo on the channel. And at some point, you have to start to turn your attention towards holistically helping the brand. And that's what we're going to talk about today.
Great. So perhaps you want to dive in with your first sort of tactics. What are some of the ways that a brand in an active use of Klaviyo can use that to help with acquisition and efficiency of acquisition?
Yeah, so I'll go over 3 specific strategies. Just give me a second while I share my screen. Let me know if you can see this.
Yep.
And then I will hit present now. Sorry, just give me 1 second. My mouse is going ridiculously slow.
It might have a little less jazzy background.
Okay, there we go.
There we go.
And feel free to interject, Ed, and talk about from your perspective and the context that you have as well, because I think it's really important to talk about data and strengthening signals because they're all intertwined, and I don't want this to come across very siloed specifically to email. But let's go into 3 strategies that you can use with Klaviyo. Now, the first one most people will be aware of, but not many people still use from what I've seen. And this is simply enabling the custom audiences with the meta integration. So again, a lot of brands that I go into just don't have this enabled by default, or at least they're not actually using it. And it's essentially a way to sync your audiences and segments back towards meta for retargeting. And now I know since this feature has been released, which is not necessarily new, it's a few years old now, the algorithm on meta has changed a lot, and a lot of people will recommend not messing around with it and just let it do its own targeting. That's not my wheelhouse, but I still think it's worth experimenting with this because it's as close to low hanging fruit as you can get.
Yeah.
And there is 3 specific audiences here that you should be targeting and syncing these segments back towards meta. Number 1, obviously, people who've abandoned the cart. We have to remember around, anywhere from 25 to 50% of customers may check the email. So you're going to be missing a lot of these people if you're just relying on email or even SMS alone to communicate with them. So you've got to still retarget them with ads. And one of the easiest ways to do that is by sending back the abandoned carts. The second one is win backs. So you could start with a very loose criteria here of people who've placed 1 order overall time. And then you would want to look at the purchase latency for your specific brands and what you're selling. So if you're selling mattresses, then obviously someone who hasn't purchased after 90 days is not necessarily a win-back opportunity. You just have to apply logic and look at the data. But if you're in consumer packaged goods, selling something like supplements, then it stands to reason that post 90 days is a good opportunity to go and retarget someone. And also looking at the reality of email and retention channels as well. Post 90 days, when someone's been on the list, after they've been bombarded by a lot of flows, a lot of campaigns, the engagement does fall off a cliff. So you have to be realistic. And again, this is where these custom audiences can come into play. And the third one is, I'll let you, I know Littledata is perfectly poised to jump in here. And I'll just finish the final one and then I'll let you jump in. And the third one is just VIP lookalike. So the lookalike in Meta, everyone's aware of. What you can do is create a custom criteria, whether it's based on purchase frequency or lifetime value or lifetime revenue, as it is in Klaviyo. You can send that back to Meta and then let the algorithm work its magic. But I know this is perfectly poised for you to jump in, Ed, and
talk
about what you guys do. So go ahead.
Data and audiences, I just have to jump the gun. Yeah, so you're right. It is low hanging fruit, and certainly thinking the audience is based off the email list is something you can do. I think that in my experience is it's pretty useful for the third and probably the second use case. The challenge with the first one is that you can only match. You can only basically retarget this audience. Let's say we're talking about Meta specifically here, if their email matches a Meta profile, and so frankly they may not be using the same email for their Meta account, and so but also the nature of retargeting people who are doing stuff pre-purchase, you may not have an email for them at all, and so that's where kind of we need to be relying on also a cookie-based audience there, basically people who visited the site, or certainly combining that with email, and that's I think what we can help with when we build the audiences within Meta itself. So but basically, Klaviyo doesn't have the concept of an anonymous profile. You can't go in. There's no data in Klaviyo for the people who have not registered an email or an SMS. And that means, yes, so when you're doing the VIP lookalike, those kind of audiences, or actually when you're doing like advanced segmentation, I want to target people who bought this product category and not this one, then Klaviyo is a great tool to do that. But when you're trying to target cookie-based audiences, people who visited your site, I think that's where sending the data to Meta or Google and doing the audience segmentation there is better.
Yeah. And as we know, with all of these strategies, they're only as good as the clean data that you feed it with. So the more concise that is, the better the results are going to be. So you're spot on with that. Anything else you want to chat about? Yeah, this is a quick, straightforward one to start off with. Or should we move on?
You're right. I think people should just do that as alongside everything else. Yes.
Yeah, definitely start with these three. And again, there is unlimited permutations here that you could expand out to. I've been the master of overcomplicating things in the past. I personally would recommend keeping it very simple and focusing on these three. You can start to go for repeat purchases who've not purchased in X amount of days, but in my opinion, it's more effort than it's worth, and you're creating a very shallow audience, which is just going to distract people. So anyway, moving on. The second one is just one thing I'm super bullish on, and I think is very underutilized, and now is actually easier to do than ever thanks to AI tools driving efficiency. Now, when I first started to explore strategies around qualitative research, it was a bit of a buzzword, and also the practical application used to fall on deaf ears. And this is how we've generally implemented it for our clients. You're looking at the customer journey, right? So you've got pre-purchase, you've got post-purchase, and then you've got churned customers. Wherever they are up to in that process, there's two types of qualitative research that we tend to deploy. There's one, taking a conversational approach, either from customer support or using open-ended surveys to harness data. And then secondly, there is progressive profiling. So button clicks essentially within an email. Both have their pros and cons. Obviously, with a conversational approach, you get more enriched data, more useful data a lot of the time. But the problem has always been having the skill set as an agency to analyze that and then extrapolate the commonalities that actually you can do something with. So we would used to collect all this data, and then we found there was a bottleneck of just collecting data for the sake of it. And there's no value in that because it just ends up, again, being a distraction to the brand. But because of the tools we've got today, which are well documented, it's becoming easier than ever to act upon these insights and actually set it up in a very automated manner. So I'll talk a little bit about ways to do this. But where you want to deploy this is the friction points. So you want to find barriers to conversion. So obviously for acquisition, this is implying things like people who go to the welcome flow, subscribe, people who abandon their cart, and then you want to feed these insights back to the acquisition team to find out where the friction is in the process. And people don't realize, but email has a big role to play here by analyzing these drop-off points. So here's a very, very simple way to do that. You've got the welcome flow, and then you can have an email 3 or 4, essentially button clicks, progressive profiling to find out why people didn't complete the purchase. Was it the price? Did they think the product wouldn't work? Was it shipping? Was it something else? There's many different strategies that you can deploy depending on the type of brand that you are and what research you're trying to collect. And then you can start to create segments and a hierarchy as well of what the main reasons are. Here's an example of that. So this is for a sleep brand. This was actually after a couple of weeks, so it's quite fast to build up a profile of why people are actually not completing the purchase. We asked this particular company, have they tried other products before? They were selling a sleeping pillow to help with neck pain. And you can see some of the reasons, some of the other things that people had tried. And we were using this research to help improve the product description pages and with the acquisition targeting as well. So again, it's all intertwined. The key is to actually collect this data and then push it back.
So this is somewhat in situ with conversion rate optimization as well, as you say. You're finding out what to push on the landing page as much as on the ads. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. So I think you've got acquisition, CRO, or experimentation, and retention. And I think we're seeing a lot of agencies now, especially on the paid media side, they're already doing the landing pages and the CRO because it's very hard to separate the two of them, or you just end up working in silos. So again, we need to work with these people. We need to play our role as well. And this is how we do that. Quick example, abandoned carts. So you can have a conversational approach. You can just send people a text asking them why they haven't completed the purchase, and then you can collect this data, you can store it, and then you can again use AI, ChatGPT. There's many tools to sort of extrapolate like what are the main reasons that people didn't buy, what's the friction in the buyer's journey. You can send automated reports to the acquisition team on a weekly basis, monthly basis, depending on how much data you're collecting. It's actually very simple to do these days, so there's no excuse not to set up these automated feedback loops, I call them.
But when you say automated and conversational, I guess most people are thinking generative AI, but maybe it's just simpler than that. You're just asking a few questions and then the user sort of answer those naturally.
Yeah. So with this approach, obviously, it is well, you can use these AI agents now. There's tons of tools that can just interact natively with people. If you're using a human, then obviously you would want to aggregate all that data somewhere and then run something to just extract what those common pain points are or what the main themes. I think it's pretty simple. Even a novice can get something like this set up and really analyze this type of data within an hour with some basic prompts. So it's not too sophisticated to set up. Matthew, I've just seen a quick question there. So what tools are you using to collect the data? So historically, I was a big fan of Typeform. You can pull even all the SMS conversations out of Klaviyo if you were using Klaviyo for SMS or email, depending on the inbox that you're monitoring for the responses as well. The key is to just make sure that you're able to extract from whatever warehouse that you're collecting that information in, and then it's as simple as plugging it into GPT in a CSV file, and then pulling out the insights that are actually useful, and then sending it in Slack, email, wherever to the acquisition team.
I guess, yeah, one of the nice features about Typeform is, and I've used it, obviously other tools will do it, but it's the routing. So if they answer one question one way, you can ask a follow-on question. It's quite nice.
Yeah, it's a beautiful tool. It is a great tool. So again, I think it's easier than ever to set these things up. There really is no excuse, and especially analyzing the data, it's not that hard. Interpreting it, well, it's another topic for another day, but it's definitely easy to collect this and start to run some basic prompts. Won't spend too much time on this one, but I still think it's an interesting use case, because I know one of the biggest problems with acquisition is people complaining that they're acquiring the wrong type of customers. Now, I think if you take a very pragmatic view, I introduced this, Ed, and said 40% of people at best will make a repeat purchase. That's an exceptional outcome that's very scalable for most D2C brands. But you can never not acquire like a light buyer. There's a lot of research on this. People saying, "Oh, I only want my high LTV customers. I don't want any of the shitty customers." I think that's a very myopic, short-sighted view of how these things work. You're going to scoop up light buyers no matter what type of acquisition or targeting campaign that you run. But obviously, you want to find out who your best customers are, and you want to get them to spend more. So there's definitely things you can deploy to help collect information about this, and also find out what are the reasons that people don't make a repeat purchase. So one of the easiest ways to do this is look at the median time when people tend to go in and make a repeat sale. If they haven't and they're a single time buyer, just ask them, why have you not made the repeat sale? You'd be surprised how many people would respond and actually tell you why they haven't purchased again. And again, it's super valuable information that should be pushed back to acquisition teams, because good retention starts right at the beginning of your acquisition campaigns, and making sure that your messaging is on point and you're appealing to the right pain points, and that you're meeting people's expectations when they're coming in at the top of the funnel. Churn risk again, sort of intertwined to the last point, but if someone has churned, it is difficult to get a response off them, but it's also important to find out, again, like the previous point, why is someone not bought again? Where did you not meet their expectations? It's really, really important, because we want to acquire more of the better customers and put them on the right product journey. So it's very important to understand if there is an expectation versus reality gap with the product or the customer experience. And this is just an easy way to collect that via things like win back flows, or just manually messaging people from customer support as well. This can work really well. So don't write these people off entirely just because they're not going to buy again. They've often got really interesting insights to share.
It's got to be said, from our experience on the data, it's always easier to get feedback off a happy, active customer than one who's given up. And so kind of asking the other way around about what do you love about it is sort of the other side of that.
I've had this, not an argument, but discussion with our team and other agencies as well. It's funny, they do great work for clients for 12 months, and then the client leaves and they go, "Oh, can we have a case study?" I'm like, "Guys, you're asking at the wrong time. Even if you're going to be chasing them around for a case study, you need to ask, when someone's at the peak point of happiness to get something like that from them."
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that summarizes qualitative research in a nutshell. Pre-purchase, get something set up. Post-purchase, when someone is about to buy again, you want to proactively tackle it before the churn sets in. And then realistically speaking, when someone has churned, how can you get some type of value off them? Even if it's not monetary, there is some interesting insights that those people have to share. In fact, oftentimes a lot more valuable than the people who just buy all the time anyway. So the third one is the UGC factory. And one of my big beliefs is, due to the commoditization of, well, you could say any type of product in the world, whether it's services, SaaS, we've talked about that, products, it's fiercely competitive in every industry, and the barrier to entry is lower than ever. And I think we're seeing, specifically when it comes to D2C acquisition, one of the ways to safeguard yourself against these people coming up is by creating this media-like entity around the brand. And we're also seeing this filter into things like creative ad testing as well, where it seems to be the go-to methodology and recommendation to really test with a very high velocity of creatives. Now, I know, again, there's a lot of AI tools which are interesting now. I think there's some legal implications coming for all these tools at some point, because we're just ending up with so much fake UGC. And I really believe there's going to be a huge demand for these, let's say, shittier type of ads that are more authentic, and you can tell someone's just took it on a smartphone and they've not done tons of editing and it's not overly manufactured. So anyway, let's get into some of these strategies. Let me go over the first one. I think is very, very underutilized. I actually made a post about this last week. No one engaged with it, so maybe this is it's one of those things that
it's either a hidden secret or it's hidden for a reason.
yeah, it must be hidden for a reason, because no one's really deploying it. But I think if you look at most D2C brands, especially in a lot of verticals like beauty, health, supplements, they're heavily leveraging influencers on social media, but they do nothing on email. And one of the things that I think is a great way to use it to acquire new people onto your list, and also just make email content more interesting, is using these ambassadors to do interactive Q&As. And if you've got someone on a retainer to produce X amount of content for you on social, why not bring them into your email list and get them to do Q&As there? You can create a lot of content that you can repurpose across blogs on your website, UGC on YouTube, and other channels. And these emails get heavily replied to, heavily clicked, which is great for deliverability. And you can come up with new content angles, again, to feed the acquisition. So if you imagine in this example, we have a doctor for this specific brand, and she's answering questions about skincare. And then again, you can use these pieces of content and these angles to feed your acquisition campaigns. So it's just looking sometimes at the things you're doing on other channels and then applying them to email as well, instead of looking at it through the context of we can only send promotions and discount codes. There's many
so
other
just
things
to clarify, with this strategy, when you say sort of live Q&A, what you're saying is basically ask us your BD questions. You're literally asking me to reply to the email with a question, and then
exactly
get an answer back.
So in subsequent follow-up emails, sometimes we'll publish the best questions, or the ones that were most interesting. Yeah,
cool.
So this is just one application. I've also, just to pause on this one of the first forays I had into this activity, we were trying to get brand ambassadors for one of the first supplement brands I ever worked with on Klaviyo. And this was only a small brand. They were doing like 50 to 100K in revenue. And we asked their customers to apply to become an ambassador and contribute to a blog post by asking like 5 questions. We got like 70 pieces out of the best quality UGC I've ever seen. People talking about how the products had changed their lives, like submitting before and after pictures. It was incredible. This was a really small brand as well. So we created a massive amount of blog posts off that. We had social media content for the rest of the year, tons of UGC. And this is just stuff that no one seems to do. And I don't know why, but it's really valuable. And number 2 is ad creatives. Now, this is an obvious one. We do a lot of competitions. So an example is, submit us like a video of how the product changed your life, whatever. You can upload it into a Google Drive folder. There's also software as well, which automates this process these days. And then you go in with subsequent emails, announce prizes, and then you've collected a massive amount, well, a significant amount of UGC that you can repurpose into the ads and sift through which are the best ones. So when someone's going out to market and they're trying to, pay influencers, they're trying to source creative agencies, use all these AI bots, one of the best things you can do is just ask your existing customers whether they would like to share an experience with the product. We've seen this one work really, really well for many brands.
So Adam, let me just stop you there because I think we're kind of we've got a few minutes left, and I'd quite like to share a couple of tactics of my own. So let me just so I think yeah, I mean, it's really interesting to say how you can get content, because you're absolutely right. That is one of the challenges the brands have with scaling out, is kind of interesting, authentic, creative, and I'm totally with you on that. And they're not going out of fashion anytime soon. I think what the interesting thing from a kind of have I got that set up right? Yeah. So we're Littledata is all about helping